Get ready to get started. All right, call this meeting to order. Can we take attendance?
James Frias is not present, so alternate Tommy Spranick.
Here.
Ben Chambers.
Here.
Rory Stolzenberg.
Here. Jessica
Hirsch-Ballering. Albert Karina Plun. Luis Sarzano.
Here.
Charles Proctor will be attending online. His alternate Sandy Shackelford here. Christine Jacobs present. Jason Espy. Bill Palmer. Daniel Wagner. Sarah Pennington present. Garland Williams.
Wood Hudson is joining for Daniel Wagner.
Very good. Thank you very much. And then for non-voting members, just to check attendance, Tony Cho, Stephen Miner.
Yes,
Stephen
I'm here.
Miner.
Thank you.
So much. And then Donna Chen.
Do we need reasons from our remote people, or do we have to wait until we pass this policy?
Say that again.
Reasons for not being here from remote people?
No, we can vote to allow them to participate electronically now.
Okay, even before.
Yep, that part doesn't change. But
Okay,
there's
well, we don't need a reason anymore.
no, you still need a reason.
Okay.
All of, when you have an in-person meeting and somebody is joining electronically, all of the same rules apply. Those haven't changed.
Okay.
What has changed is when you choose to hold an all virtual meeting.
I see. But also that we have to re-adopt it every year.
Yes.
And we
I'll
haven't
go through all of those
until
changes.
4.
But we're still on the old policy, which requires you to give a reason.
Okay.
There's no in-person forum.
She just said we have 7.
There's 7. Oh, I thought we had 8 for in-person forum. No, 7. Okay.
All right. Staffing update.
All right, so I want to introduce you guys to Borjan Gorgievsky. He has been with the PDC working under a different federal program. He is sliding into transportation planning. He will be the lead staff member for MPO Tech moving forward. You guys have already met in the back, I hope. Sarah Simba, she will be the lead staff member for the Policy Board and for CTEC. So you will be seeing a lot of them. We're very excited to welcome them. We're very excited to be keeping Borjan in a role that keeps him with the organization. He was previously working with BODI, the broadband grant. Broadband is a finite grant that someday will end. And this was an opportunity for him to slide into something that he was really passionate about, while also being able to keep him on board. So welcome, Borjan and Sarah. We're really excited to have you guys.
Great, welcome to that.
Thank you.
Accepted the agenda. Any changes to the agenda today? Do we have any matters from the public? All right, matters from the public. Peter, you want to talk?
Sure. So, thank you. I just wanted to share a couple of quick announcements from the Mobility Alliance. We've been adding socials to our calendar roughly monthly. This month, we're having a joint social with our counterparts from the Shenandoah Valley, the Shenandoah Valley Bike Coalition. That's going to be a week from Thursday. That's August 29th in Waynesboro. And we're going to get a tour of Sunset Park from Waynesboro's Director of Planning, Parks and Planning. And Dwayne plays a role in Waynesboro, sort of like Chris used to play here, where he does actually a lot of transportation work as well. So Dwayne's going to talk about Sunset Park, which is pretty cool. But he's going to also talk about some stuff that's even perhaps cooler about assembling a large landscape park network in Waynesboro, as well as shared use path connectivity from Waynesboro all the way to the Afton Tunnel, as well as to Shenandoah National Park, and increasing access to that. So I have a little pile of flyers over there. I hope to send another email reminder, but anyway, that's Thursday, August 29th, 6 to 7:30 in Waynesboro. So that's exciting. And then also I wanted to let you know that the Mobility Alliance's next meeting is on September 30th, right here. I believe that's 4 o'clock. Let me just check real quick. Yep, that's 4 to 6 right here at Water Street Center. The Monday after the Loop DeVille, I'm sure Tommy's going to talk about Loop DeVille. That's going to be plenty social. So that'll be our social for the month. And then the Mobility Alliance is working on a bunch of cool stuff. One of them is what we call Easy Routes, which is a simplified way to find one's way across the urban area, Charlottesville and Albemarle, will be a fight on low-stress streets. I won't be surprised if Ben or Tommy includes that in their updates. I'm not gonna get into it. If not, we'll let you guys know more when the time comes. So anyway, hope to see you all week from Thursday in Waynesboro at sunset.
Thanks. All right, no changes to the agenda. Do we have a motion for approval of the minutes or any changes?
Make the motion to approve the minutes.
Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, new business, remote electronic participation in all virtual meeting policy.
Also within the general administration was the office.
Oh, yes, sorry.
That will be the switching of chair.
All right, we have an election for officers. We have a slate of nominees already. Ben Chambers of the Jump Board and Airport Authority Board. And for Vice Chair, Albert Karina Plum of the county. I'm opening the floor for additional nominations. Do we have any additional nominations? Seeing none, let's take a vote by acclamation of the slate. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Congratulations to our new chair.
You abstaining? Officially, just want to make sure I'm doing it right.
Okay.
Cool. I vote for myself.
Great. Crazy.
That then changes the chair.
Oh, now I have
Your chair.
Mid-meeting.
Congratulations, chair.
All right, so my turn.
Yes.
New business, the electronic participation policy, procedure.
Great. So in the 2024 General Assembly, legislation was adopted that necessitates several changes to the remote electronic participation and all virtual meeting policy that was previously adopted. In your packet is both a red line version that is edited from the original to the current, as well as a final clean version. The original was adopted by the Policy Board in September 28 of 2022. Just so you guys know, as an advisory body to the Policy Board, it's actually the Policy Board that adopts the policy, and then you all follow the adopted policy, but I wanted to share it with you because they will be considering it next week. So in your next meeting, this policy will likely be in effect. The changes include the ability to hold all virtual meetings limited to 2 meetings per calendar year, or 50%, rounded up to the next nearest whole number. So for MPO Tech, if we have 6 meetings a year, you are allowed to hold up to 3 of those meetings in an all virtual format, meaning no in-person quorum is required. You are not allowed to have virtual meetings back to back, however. So if you did virtual, you would then have to come in person before you could hold another all virtual meeting. All of those need to be posted publicly, whether it's in person or all virtual. Also, it has expanded provisions concerning the use of audio visual tech during all virtual meetings. So if you're holding an all virtual meeting where everybody is participating online and audio visual is being used, everybody has to have camera and sound on in order to establish a quorum. So you have to not only be able to see, but you have to be able to hear the members when the roll call is taken. Additionally, anytime audio visual is turned off, that member is considered absent from the meeting during that time. And so if there are any votes that are occurring in all virtual meetings, cameras and sound have to be on. They have to be able to both see and hear the votes as they occur. So that is new for this year. And then additionally, a change is it used to be that you could adopt a policy and then that policy stands in effect until a change is made. Now you are required to annually adopt a policy. So you have to put before the board every year a policy with either amendments or the same. And then I already told you, the policy board will take action on this next week, but all advisory committees, so that would be CTAC and MPO Tech, will follow their adopted policy. This is an informational item. Just wanted to make sure you guys knew it was coming down the pike and if you had any questions. I think the only other question I would ask of you all is the interest level in holding all virtual meetings for MPO Tech. Every board is a little bit different. Every committee is a little bit different. Some find a great deal of value being together and discussing, and others, you know, find it easier to attend virtually. We are allowed to do either once this policy is in place. I just want to throw that out for any thoughts or comments. If you don't have any, we can keep going over to it.
I mean, I think one advantage of all virtual is that for the people who are usually virtual, it can be difficult for them to participate and for us to hear and see them. So getting them on the same level as everyone else occasionally might be useful.
Yeah, and I agree. I think also, mid-morning sometimes is hard to get back and forth, so I would every now and then having one. And there's a lot of it, in person, so.
Yeah, I think we've had some really productive conversations in person, but I think we sometimes have meetings that are a little more informational heavy, and maybe this would be appropriate to be virtual. Yeah, I agree. All right, and there's no vote on this from us.
There is not. If okay with you all, we'll work with the chair when establishing the agendas, whether it would be more appropriate to hold that one virtual or in person. I will make a recommendation later in the agenda. We're going to talk about changing December's meeting date because the policy board falls on Christmas. So we're going to talk about moving it up. I would make a recommendation that since it's off the normal schedule, we hold that one virtually to make it more accommodating for people's schedules.
All right, next item is the tip adjustment, and this is also an informational one, not a vote.
Yes, that is correct.
Sorry, before we go into that, we never took a vote, I guess, to accept all our virtual people and get their reason. So do we always
Our
do
voting
that?
members. Yeah, we do for the voting members.
We have voting members up there. We do.
Yeah, we do.
All right, so
And Chuck. And Bill.
Chuck and Bill are the two that we need reasons from.
And
Wood.
And Wood. All right, so Wood, I'm gonna start with you. If you can give us a reason why you are calling in instead of attending in person.
Sure, I am joining from Richmond, Virginia, which is where I live, which is over 60 miles from the meeting location.
Wonderful, thank you. Chuck, can you do the same, please?
Yeah, I'm dialing in from my office in Culpeper, which is, I don't know how, it's like 60 miles away, but I don't recall exactly what the distance is. But Sandy's there and representing as the representative for VDOT in my stead being present.
Perfect, thank you. And Bill Palmer, can you please give a reason why you're not attending in person?
Yeah, I am sick, so I don't want to be around people right now.
That is an absolutely legitimate reason. So I guess we now will, do I need to take a nomination for them to vote, or do I just do a vote?
I move that they are able to vote electronically.
All right, so anyone, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, welcome to the meeting. It's a little late, but you finally did it. Lucinda, tip amendment, please.
So there's no vote on this. These are just minor adjustments. And all of them are to update fiscal year, the actual fiscal year 2025 funding. CAT amended their table 001 for operating assistance and 009 for purchasing support vehicles, and they just updated the numbers. They had estimated numbers in fiscal year 2025, and they put new numbers in that are actuals. And it's the same thing for the TJPDC 1 table, which is a new table added to the TIP in fiscal year 2024 for the mobility management program, which is a 5310 grant. And they added the fiscal year 2025 numbers to fiscal year 2024 because of the difference between federal funding as federal fiscal year and state fiscal year. So that's all there is. I don't know if you have any questions.
All right, hearing none, we can move on to the next section. Federal functional classification recommendations, Christine.
Okay. Just as a high-level review, I know all of you have seen this before, but VDOT is conducting a major statewide update to the federal functional classification, which historically occurs after the decennial census. VDOT staff coordinated the review with each of Virginia's MPOs. VDOT requests that MPOs approve a resolution acknowledging the coordination effort within Virginia. The draft FFC map that was shared in May was circulated, as well as a comprehensive guide for the review. Stakeholders then had until June to provide comments back. Staff and MPO Tech, as well as staff from the local jurisdictions, made some suggested revisions to the draft map. They were submitted to district staff, which are then reviewed and forwarded on to central office for their review and shared with FHWA. We were told that the review was anticipated to be finalized by September of 2024. Since you guys only meet in August and October, we put it before you this month. In the packet, there is a resolution with a suggested revision attached. So since central office and FHWA have not yet had an opportunity to provide comment back on the suggested revisions, originally we put in your packet a resolution that said we recommend that you recommend the policy board adopt said resolution with the suggestions attached. I would be more comfortable revising my recommendation as staff, and that I would actually say that you guys recommend that the policy board defer a decision on this matter until central office and FHWA review those revisions and provide a final draft map for consideration. I think there is some concern by MPO staff that if a resolution is passed on the existing map, then the changes that are being recommended, if they are not incorporated, then you all have voted to approve it without those suggested revisions. So we would recommend holding off on a vote. We have communicated to both, VDOT, and we've talked to other MPOs in the Commonwealth. Even though there's a deadline of December, it's very evident that a lot of MPOs are not going to have this completed by December because they too are waiting for a final map before they ask their policy board to have consideration on that. So our revised recommendation, I'll read it, is MPO staff recommends a motion to recommend that the policy board defer a decision on the resolution approving the proposed updates to the FFC until a thorough review by VDOT staff and FHWA occurs and a final revised map is available for consideration and final approval. Happy to take questions because I know that is different than the recommendation in the packet.
Is there a time frame that we have for VDOT's review? And
I'll turn to VDOT because I don't want to answer on behalf, but they have sought up from central office what that deadline is and when we will get it back so that we can put it before the policy board to speak for you all.
Chuck, jump in if you want to, but I think originally they were requesting that this be completed by September. That was when we had communicated initially. I do know that it's not on, that some other MPOs do not have this on their agenda until later this fall, though.
Yeah.
We are continuing to seek clarification from central office on their time frame and hope to be able to get some clarity on the hard deadlines.
so a revised map would be available in September? That was.
We're trying to get clarity on the central office process for reviewing the requested revisions and what the feedback is going to look like from them on what they're going to do with these requests. Do you want to add anything, Chuck?
Hopefully we can get some feedback tomorrow at our meeting on what they're going to do. Typically, the way it works is we submit any changes to the central office, they review them, and then approve them, and then they incorporate them in the map, and then they forward that to FHWA for final approval. But basically, because of the way the percentages of different roadway types varies, we've got to stay within those parameters. So they're going to review them and make the determination on whether they comply with the guidelines or not. And then we'll get the feedback from them.
Okay, but we don't have a date.
We do not have a date. Hence the change in our recommendation on the vote.
So we do.
I would like you guys to take action on recommending the policy board do not vote on this item until there is a final map to consider.
Do we need to vote on a motion to say don't
The
consider
policy
something?
board has this on their agenda in their next meeting,
Oh, boy.
and it requires the MPO Tech to make a recommendation to the policy board. And that is what is stated within the resolution, is that the policy board has received a recommendation from MPO Tech.
So the recommendation we're passing at this time is please defer on making any judgments here.
Yes.
All right, anybody want to make that motion?
I'll move to defer.
Second. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
I'll abstain.
Abstain. All right. So we are going to defer.
Yeah.
Or at least recommend defer.
The policy board in their next meeting has a presentation on FFC. You all said that you did not need that, that you were very familiar with it. So they'll get a presentation on all the different classifications, what is arterial, what is left, all of that. And then at the end, we'll say the same thing we just said to you all, that while we had anticipated this to be completed, it doesn't appear that it will be based on additional review that needs to occur. So we're going to ask them to defer as staff, and we will share with them that MPO Tech also moved to defer.
Excellent, thank you. VDOT, you have some updates for us, Chuck or Sandy?
Chuck's going to do the presentation.
Let me share my screen real quick here. Let's see here, get the right one. All right. Assume you can see my screen now.
Yes.
Yep, we got it.
All right, cool. Let me see if I can get it to work. All right, there we go. All right, I'm going to give you an update on the pipeline studies. We have the Ivy Road study, which is currently, we're working through the developing what the preferred scenarios are for that one with the locality and the localities in the MPO. And then we've got the update to the smart scale projects that we're submitting this round. Basically, here's an update on the agenda. We're going to talk about the Ivy Road. We'll talk about the Campo projects, and then we'll talk about the Albemarle County projects. This is an overview of the Ivy Road study. Basically, this is the corridor. It goes from Farmington, Edmond out to the west to Alderman in the east. But main focus was the central area with Old Ivy and the interchange and the intersections at Bel Air and Ivy Road. This was basically the preferred alternative that we presented and discussed at the SWG Stakeholders Working Group meeting. And we were working with the county to finalize the items that were going to be included. But basically, this is what the preferred solution is. It includes a roundabout at Boar's Head and Ivy Road, a roundabout at Canterbury Road and Ivy Road, that's there at the market, Bel Air Market, and then a median between the two roundabouts along 250. It includes the triangle about, which is basically a one-way, converting those one-way roads, Faulkner, Garth Road, and Old Ivy Road right there into a series of one-way circular roadways. And then ramp extensions on both on and off ramp to Old Ivy Road from the 250 bypass. A shared use path along Old Ivy Road from Garth Road to the Ivy Road intersection on the east end. It also includes reconfiguring the intersection or the railroad underpass at the east end. These are the preferred solutions that we're moving forward with as part of the study recommendations. We had a couple of discussions about how we could group these to make sure we could get eligibility for the MPO to submit some of these applications next round. And we met with the folks from OIPI yesterday and went through this. And basically, we grouped them into 3 different packages that could be submitted by the well, 2 of them could be submitted by the MPO. Both the roundabout packages and the ramp extension packages could be included. We were looking at the shared use path and the triangle about could be done with outside of the smart scale application process, because those are probably more viable in other funding programs. The triangle about could be done with safety funding, actually, as a hired equipment project. So one thing I will point out is that we are doing some further analysis on the railroad underpass at the eastern end to make sure we're including a pedestrian facility underneath that underpass, but we want to make do some further analysis to see if we can still maintain two-way traffic or we would have to go with one-way traffic. And that's one of the things we're going to still work through in the future. Any questions about this before we move on to some of the other recommendations from the study?
Yeah, so if I'm understanding the triangle about, if I'm reading that right, can you zoom in a little bit to that intersection where you have the old Ivy and the off ramp?
Nope, I can't. Sorry.
So is that where it's a proposed one way, but is that where you're talking about whether or not?
It's right there, those three roads right there in the middle. You basically have Old Garth, which is the ramp and Old Garth Road. You've got Faulkner Drive on the east side of the triangle, and you've got Old Ivy as the southern part of the triangle. Basically, it would make those all one-way streets in the counterclockwise direction. Does that make sense?
So Old Ivy would be one way all the way to P50?
Just between those two intersections.
Between the two. Okay. Thank you. Do we have this little packet?
We don't have this particular slide. I did send it out to
This morning.
so they can send it out.
Thank you.
We can forward it on to everybody so that you have this as well. It wasn't ready in time for the packet.
Any other questions? All right, I'll move on. We have a couple of other longer term solution packages that they're gonna be in the included in the study, but therefore consideration in the future as needs arise. And that deals with some of the improvements at the western end of the corridor that were presented at the as part of the survey. But there's not a lot there are needs, but they're not great needs. So these could be something that the county could consider for improvements in the future. That's the western end, which includes the improvements at and some of these there's two packages of improvements. So we're not necessarily saying these are the preferred ones. We'll include both sets in the recommendations. And then this is the longer term at the interchange, which basically would include reconstruction of the bridges across 250, as well as reconstruction of the existing ramps to connect to 250. And this would be a major because it's going to incorporate and basically rebuild the railroad bridges too, as well as the railroad underpasses. This would be a very long-term project. And then the last one would be the eastern end with the intersections at Stillfried, Reed, Colonnades, and some median work in there. There were two options for this that were reviewed, and we're going to include both those in there. Something the county could consider in the future as needs arise on at those locations. All right. Next steps are, like I said, we're going to do some further analysis on the railroad underpass at the eastern end to make sure the preferred alternative is going to work. And then we're going to do update the analysis to show how the system works as a whole. And then we're going to develop some planning level cost estimates for the various components and then compile a final report. So that's it for Ivy Road. Any other questions about Ivy?
I guess I do want to ask about the planning level cost estimate, just before you even get to doing, the actual back of the napkin math. What's your ballpark? What do you think this costs?
A lot.
Yeah.
I mean, the cost estimates now currently are pretty high. Normally the sketch tool doesn't give us the same rigorous estimates, but we were gonna they've just updated the slice tool, so we'll see what the numbers come up with once we get to that. The roundabouts are probably going to be in the $20 million range for both the roundabouts. So I would say it's probably gonna be for that, just the roundabouts and the median closure is probably gonna be close to $50 million. The ramp extensions on the bypass, those are probably gonna be about $10 to $12 million a piece. So you're talking about somewhere $25 to $30 million for the ramp extensions. The shared use path, I don't really have a good idea on that one. The triangle about piece, that's something that's low cost. We could do that for probably less than $1 million. Couple $100,000, because it's just basically restriping for the most part. The railroad underpass, that's a little bit more detailed, but it's probably gonna be less than $10 million, probably $5 million maybe, because it's basically just putting in a raised crosswalk or crossing underneath the bridge parallel to the road, and then some striping. It will include possibly some signalization to put in the signals for the two-way controls, if that's the preferred scenario. And that runs somewhere around $1 million.
So we see a price tag of like $80 million come back on this. None of us are going to be too surprised.
I wouldn't be, if you wanted to look at the whole thing as a package, it would probably be south of $100 million, but it's going to be up there.
All right.
I would probably pull out the triangle about the shared use path and do them with other funding mechanisms, because I think we can do them at a lesser cost.
Where does the shared use path go?
It goes on the west side, or the west or south side of Old Ivy Road. The biggest piece of that's going to be building the new structure across 250 bypass to get from across that portion of the road, because we can't fit it on the existing structure.
Or did you mean like bigger connectivity wise?
Yeah, I guess maybe that. I don't know, but I also don't want, what's the connection over 250? I'm sorry. What are you talking about there, Chuck?
There would be a new bridge, a pedestrian bridge across 250 parallel to the Old Ivy Road Bridge, because we can't fit that facility on Old Ivy Road Bridge.
And does that bridge have a separate Albemarle project as well at some point?
There is a state of good repair project to replace the improve that bridge, but it's basically an in-kind improvement, and there's funding restrictions on what can be done with that don't allow for us to widen that structure. So we couldn't put it on that structure.
So it crosses, so there's gonna be a new bridge, a pedestrian bridge over 250 on Old Ivy, and then the shared use path continues to where?
Garth. All the way to Old Garth.
Old Garth. So one couldn't live in Huntington Village or the new Old Ivy residences and walk to Bel Air Market.
We'll have to work through that, because getting underneath that underpass is something that I don't know if it's been worked out yet with the county. In the current configuration, once we do the roundabout, we'll have to look at the configuration of the roadway underneath there to see if we can incorporate some sort of pedestrian facility underneath that underpass.
All right.
Sorry, one more thing on the shared use path. I kind of alluded to this last week, Chuck, but I still have some heartache about the eastern end ending at basically at the underpass and at the car wash. It looks like the project limits go to Alderman and Copley, and if you get to Alderman and Copley, you can get to UVA basically. And while there's that crosswalk there, that bike lane there is like terrible. Did you guys give any consideration to building the shared use path along that eastern end to connect up to the project limits?
I don't think we looked at that necessarily. We looked at getting just under the underpass to connect to the existing facilities that are at that on the other side of along Ivy Road, not extending it further than that. Because right now there's nothing there. You're walking in the road.
Yeah.
And there's not even, you can't even get underneath that underpass safely.
Well, I mean, that part was definitely needed, don't get me wrong.
But we didn't look beyond that. I mean, as part of this study.
Yeah. So,
But there are facilities there that would get you all the way to Alderman. Granted, it's not a shared use path.
so just to be clear, though the study limits extended into the city, all of the recommendations are located within the county?
For them, yes. I mean, originally, to go back to the beginning, the original scope of this project was mainly to look at the interchange, and it was expanded over time. And the logical termini just basically worked out to be Edmond Road in the west and Alderman in the east, but those weren't the main focus points of this study. We added a bunch of stuff based on feedback we got from the localities to extend the project limits out further, but the main focus area ended up being mostly the Old Ivy Road and the intersections on the west side of the interchange, because that's where the biggest demands were for both safety and the pedestrian facilities on Old Ivy Road.
Over the next couple of years, developments on the north side of Old Ivy, including Greystar's Old Ivy residences, are going to be building a shared use path that's going to connect Leonard Sandwich to Old Ivy. So I'm just like, I guess, reaffirming the need to then let a facility be built on Old Ivy that's going to tie into that infrastructure. But did I read correctly on that eastern tunnel, railroad tunnel, that where does that shared use path end, and does it turn into a sidewalk of sorts going underneath the tunnel, or is the shared use path going to continue? Or are you still looking at that?
We're going to look at what we can put under there. We can't fit a shared use path underneath the tunnel. There's not enough width. So basically, we're going to put a 6 foot wide sidewalk underneath there on one side of the road. That's elevated so that you don't to make it as safe as possible.
Are you saying that if we had two-way traffic or if it's one way?
It's one way. It's going to be one lane, one travel lane, and one 6 foot sidewalk underneath the bridge.
And there's not enough room to do a shared use path, like because there's two travel lanes right now. And I guess I'm surprised.
So it's a one car at a time.
Okay.
You also have to consider what the VDOT standard.
Yeah, I know, that's why
they have some bigger buffers than we.
Yeah, we're going to try to do the best we can there. But
they're not gonna,
that's
that's
what we ended up with for the concept. But like I said, once we get further along, if it becomes a project, we can try to get a little bit more out of it. But part of it is the alignment of the road, and the grades between the road and the underpass. It's skewed going through there, and we can't change that.
Right.
Because it won't meet, we can't get it to work. To meet any kind of standard. So we're going to try to get whatever the maximum we can get under there for the bike and pedestrian facility.
True.
That answers your question about where it would end.
From the eastern side, yeah, on both sides, yeah. Unfortunately, but yes.
All right.
Well, I will say, come out September 28th, and you'll see hundreds of people biking and walking on this corridor. So I'll leave these here for you guys. Take plenty of photographs. People
Hopefully
walking
it doesn't
under that.
rain.
What's that?
Said hopefully it doesn't rain.
I agree.
Yeah. All right, so I think we're ready to talk about some smart scale projects now.
Okay, we got 4 smart scale applications by the MPO. Fifth Street. I do have cost estimates on some of these that are included. We're still validating most of them, but we can go through them real quick. This is the DDI interchange at Fifth Street conversion with the shared use path running through the median. I don't have the cost estimate on this. Is one of the ones they're still working on and doing the final review, so I don't have a cost estimate on this one, but basically this is going to convert it to a diversion diamond with the shared use path running from the new trail project at the east end to the existing sidewalk at the west end. The next project is Pantops, and it's two separate slides, and it's looking at $36 million for this project. It includes the sidewalk and reconfiguring of the intersection to accommodate pedestrian crossings at Rolkin. And then the other part of it is the construction of a park and ride lot at Peter Jefferson Parkway, closure of the crossover just to the west of the intersection here, and then adding a right turn lane and converting this intersection to eliminate the through movement. So you're just going to be able to make throughs or lefts and right in, right out at the from the side streets. The main line will still have the same movements. And like I said, this one, combination of the two is $36 million.
Is that mostly the park and ride, I'm guessing?
Part of it is because you're basically having to buy all this right away. The actual road improvements aren't going to be that much. But I mean, overall, without looking at the actual estimate, I'm not positive all the intricacies of it. But yeah,
Just as comparison though, I think if you combine both of these projects that were submitted in the previous round, this one actually did not increase very much in price. Some of them did. So it's pretty similar to what the price tag was 2 years ago.
Yeah, I'm more amazed if the Rolkin Road is like more than half of that, or around half of that. Not that I don't want crosswalks and a sidewalk there, but that's pricey.
all right, the next one is this is the corridor for Barracks Road. Basically includes the roundabout at Georgetown, the double roundabouts at the interchange, and the shared use path running all the way through the corridor. Price tag $129 million. Does include some pedestrian, reconstruction of the Millmont intersection to meet ADA requirements, as well as many of the crossovers on the north side to meet ADA requirements, and provides high visibility crosswalks at both ends of the roundabout at the interchange, as well as crosswalks of all the interchange ramps. It does include crosswalks at the roundabout at Georgetown with raised platforms. And it does include we're going to put in the pads for the bus stops that are there, and reconstruct those bus stops, and for the future installation of shelters by the county or the transit agency. And there's also one there's two at one at Georgetown, one at Surrey, and there's one in the city. I can't remember. It's shown on there in the yellow box near where the trailhead comes in.
Cedars Court.
Yeah, opposite Cedar. Any questions about this one?
I'm sorry, can you repeat what you just said? I'm a little flummoxed. Yeah, what was about Cedars Court?
They're just adding a boarding pad, like a concrete boarding pad there.
We're rebuilding the bus stop, and we're going to put we're replacing the sidewalk with a shared use path, and we're actually going to put a pad for a bus shelter at that stop. That's currently, there's just sidewalk there now.
Across the street.
Ooh, no.
We talked about that at the previous meeting, why we're not able to put a crossing at that location, unfortunately. But there will be one on southern or eastern leg of the roundabout, and then the next closest one is Millport, so there's one on either side. I don't recall offhand, like 500 feet, 600 feet, do you recall, Chuck, the distance between the new proposed crosswalk and the roundabout?
One of them is really close. I think one of them is like 500 feet and the other one's like 300 feet. They weren't both the same. One of them was, Melmont's closer. But I can't remember. The part of the problem is there's a vertical curve on Barracks Road in the westbound direction, and you can't meet sight distance for the crosswalks at that location. So that's why we were basically against even considering
it. My question is less about the project itself and more about process. In previous rounds of Smart Scale, have we gotten the cost estimate after we've submitted the project application? Because that seems a little backwards to me.
Typically that's the way it's worked out. And we do a preliminary estimate, and then this is the first round. We usually get the cost estimates usually after the fact, just because it takes so long to develop them. To get that material. I mean, we can try to start earlier, and that's what we're going to try to do next round, because L&D is developing these cost estimates, and they're not, until we finalize the sketch, they can't finalize the cost estimate, because we've got to route the final sketch through all the different disciplines to get cost from the different disciplines as we compile the estimate. So it's a iterative process in doing the estimates.
Yeah, I think when you're coming to the local jurisdictions and to our MPO and asking us to, endorse something and get behind an application, it's a very different discussion when you put a dollar number to it. And we didn't have that discussion before we submitted this application. We had sort of a rough idea that this is a big project, but I don't think if you had put $130 million in front of our decision makers locally, that this is where they would want to spend all of those dollars. So that might be something in the future that we want to have as a part of that discussion leading into the application being submitted by the localities or the MPO.
I will say that this isn't local money. This is coming from the state pot of money. You're competing for these funds on a statewide basis. So it's not like money that the locality has to put on projects.
Yes, but we are making decisions about how we want to compete in that. And, we might have better places where we might think $130 million might compete a little better, especially from our perspective and our own values locally here.
I can agree, and I can understand that. It's just a matter of the process. We try to find out what the locations are early on in the process, so that we can do the studies, develop the sketches, develop the cost estimates, and that process takes 8 to 10 months to do. And we don't get cost estimates till the end of that process. So we're making the decisions early on for what we're going to pursue, but we're not going to know necessarily what the costs are until all that stuff's done.
That's what it is they're not going to go through that conceptual design and cost estimate if it is not a priority to submit.
Yes, but
what's
come out within the concept is not necessarily the same as identifying the need. Those are two different steps.
Ben, this project alone, this study alone cost almost $300 million or $300,000 to do this study.
Sure.
So we're having to invest a lot of money on these studies up front to actually get to this point. So we don't want to spend that money if it's not a viable if it's not something that has support and a viable project from the locality.
And I totally understand that, and I think a lot of the other steps in the process that you've mentioned, including that $300,000 worth of study, absolutely necessary to come up with a concept. I just think the last couple steps of you get a concept, then you go ask the locality if they want to back it, and then you tell them how much it's going to cost, seems out of order. So I don't have a problem with the process leading up to that point, but right there, it sort of seems like we have a weird handoff. Well, that might need to be addressed in future rounds.
Well, I mean, back at the Ivy Road study, you kind of gave us, back of the, napkin math. Like, did we come close to this and talking about like back of the napkin math for this project? Like, do we have any concept that we would get halfway to this number? Like, I'm new to this, but,
I think the pre-application, it was in the ballpark of maybe 60 to 80 million. Chuck, do you recall? It was somewhere.
We for the pre-application, we try to develop those, and I've tried to develop that every round. For smart scale, for the pre-application, you just have to you can put $1 in for all the different PE right away in construction. You don't even have to definitely have a final estimate. For the final application you do, but we try to develop some sort of very high level cost estimate at pre-app that you guys can look at. It's not going to be, that's why I said we'll do a sketch tool estimate, and that's going to be what it is. It's just going to be a sketch tool estimate at pre-app, and you guys can look at that and make your decisions based on that. But like I said, those are, I actually had L&D do them this time. In past rounds, I've actually done a lot of them. So we'll do our best to get you as much information as we can as early in the process. It just, for us to get to this point, it's not that easy to do. Because this, if it's recommended and it's approved for funding, this is our budget to build this project. If we don't meet these numbers, we may not be able to build this project. And so we want to do our due diligence in that cost estimating process to make sure we get the best estimate we can, because after the fact, we can't necessarily go back and ask for more money.
There is always an opportunity, though, if this project is not funded this round, to go back in the next round and look at how could we maybe like slim it down or pull components or reconfigure the project.
Wasn't there a
For
conversation
the county and the city, but not for the MPO or the TJPDC? Because don't we have to apply for what's in the pipeline recommendation?
Or any of the other qualifying components. So that's why you guys were able to do like a portion of it. Because if we find another resolution for the interchange, for example, the PDC or the MPO could still apply for an interchange improvement project.
Even if it's not the recommendation that was in the pipeline?
Correct.
Correct. I mean, the interchange is an eligible component. And that's what, if we go to the next slide, I can show it better. Okay, this is the other MPO application. This left portion of the project could be submitted as a standalone project by the MPO without the shared use path on the east end. But this eastern section is a lower cost component of this project. And it doesn't add that much cost to the project versus the benefit.
Yeah, I thought that we had talked about these as two projects.
This is a separate application. But this one costs $92 million, and it doesn't include the county portion.
Well,
right.
Yeah.
Chuck, having seen all the projects from across the district now and their cost estimates, do you think this has a chance? I mean, the whole district got like 150 million last time, right?
I mean, we didn't get that much. Well, if you count stated good or high priority funding, we probably got about that much, but because of the changes in the rules this time, it's not as clear as to how competitive we're going to be for high priority funding, because they took out land use, which was a significant, gave us a significant advantage over some of the other areas. With that change, I don't know. Typically, my break point was like $20 million before. Above $20 million, I was hard pressed to get stuff funded. Below $20 million, we were real competitive. This round, because of the changes, I don't know how it's going to play out. And since these applications are applying for high priority funding, it depends on what everybody else across the state submits. But typically, when we've had projects that are of this magnitude, they haven't done very well. So based on historic, I would say they're not going to compete very well, but I really don't know until I see the numbers this round because of the changes they made.
Hey Chuck, I'm curious, like how much of the cost is going towards right of way?
Hold on, let me see if I can pull one up and find out.
I have a clarifying question while you do that, Sandy, to the answer that you just gave me.
Yeah.
I was under the impression with pipeline studies that the MPO can only apply for either the entirety of what's in the recommendation or like these interchange improvements that we're eligible for. Did I hear you say, even if it's an interchange improvement, it can be different than the scope that was in the pipeline recommendation?
Yes.
So there is really nothing about the pipeline study that's holding us to a particular design, particular features that can be changed from what's in the pipeline recommendation.
If it meets one of the other eligibility criteria, correct?
For smart scale.
For smart scale, yeah, it only holds you to that certain set of recommendations if there aren't any other of those qualifying features, like the interchange improvement or a new roadway alignment or something like that.
Then you have to do it in its entirety with the scope that is
Correct.
the recommendation.
Correct.
One of the things we're trying to do, especially with the Ivy Road study, is that's why we met with the OIP folks yesterday to make sure we're crafting the recommendations so that the MPO could be eligible to submit some of those or all of those components.
Yeah, I was thinking about also applying it to the Ivy Road. So once we get to Ivy Road, if it has, you know, this comprehensive set of recommendations, we would also be eligible for interchange improvements, but we wouldn't necessarily be eligible for like triangle about or shared use path.
No, you stepped out during that part, but that was what Chuck talked about. So we had talked to them about having like these smaller packages within the improvements that we would identify upfront as being potential pipeline improvements separate from the entirety of.
And that's what we talked about at LUTEC.
Yes.
Is how we frame it in the pipeline recommendations.
Right.
So Chuck got confirmation.
And I try to look at that every round and do my due diligence to make sure that we're trying to give us the best project. Okay, for the just pulled up the application for the right-of-way cost for this project with the interchange and the shared use path. The right-of-way cost alone is $18.8 million. And most of that is the interchange itself, because we're having to condemn several properties, total takes on the west side of the property, and that's just the cost of the right of ways is really horrendous. But you can see on this, the red lines that are shown, those are the right of way lines that we're going to have to get right away.
Yeah, that Tommy, 18.8 million per employee.
Oh, thank you, sorry.
Part of it is inflation because we've had to inflate it out to the year, and for right away doesn't start till 2031, so you're getting almost 6 years, 7 years of inflation on top of the base cost for that item. The base uninflated cost right now is like $14 million for right away, and it's inflated to 18.8. And that's part of the issue. You gotta, with smart scale, we're looking at we're not looking at funding the projects right away. We're looking at funding them in the end of the 6-year plan, which gets adopted next year. So you're talking about 2027 is the soonest we can start expecting funds on these projects. So we're escalating any cost estimates we do to that start date or whenever the phase, whether it's PE, right away, or construction starts. So that's included in the cost estimate as well.
Chuck, what's the uninflated base cost of this overall?
Hold on, give me 1 second here now. 65.8 million or 65.9 million.
Just this portion.
That does include contingency,
not the full corridor.
That does include the contingency for the various items in the cost estimate. But the contingencies are relatively not that high. PE is 15, right of way is 30%. Construction has a 42% contingency. And then CEI, which is your cost to build the project. project management, and that's 20.
Why is construction contingency so high? Is that higher than usual? That sounds like how
Unknowns
much.
it depends on the type of structure. This one, the bridge is the biggest issue. Getting underneath the bridge and building the retaining walls and the geology to build those roundabouts, because that whole north quadrant there's a huge retaining wall there with sound walls on top of it, and all that's going to have to be torn down and reconstructed. And there's a lot of unknowns with once we get into that, what it's going to take.
We're not able to find records of when the first retaining wall was built to understand the geology of that hill. To a degree we can, but we don't get into the detail. We don't have surveys, so we don't necessarily, there's so many unknowns at this point that we can't really, we do our due diligence to try to accommodate it. And then because we're at such an early stage, there's risk involved, and you sign risks based on how much information you have. And we don't have enough information. And we have this with every project. And there's ranges that we use for those. And 40% is probably near what it should be for construction, given the time frame between now and when it's going to be constructed. What the variables are that can change. So. Okay.
All right, I can move on if you guys, unless you have any other questions.
No, let's go ahead and move on.
Okay. Let me get right to the screen here. All right, Albemarle County, we got the Old Trail, the Hillsdale, Rio intersection improvements, Barracks, the other Georgetown portion of the Barracks Road, as well as Plank Road down south. Old Trail, this one's a roundabout conversion at in the Crozet area for where the Old Trail 250 intersection is. And we're looking at a cost estimate on this one of $16 million, 16.7 million. Basically, you've got a 2-lane road with a entrance to 2-lane road. It does include a shared use path along the north side, as well as connections to existing sidewalks on the north side, and then there's proposed sidewalk on the west side of, and this is actually not the latest drawing. We are actually including a crosswalk on the south leg of this intersection that leads into Western Albemarle High School. But that one's actually in validation right now. We've pretty much finished our validation. We're waiting on central office to complete their portion of it. This is the Rio Road intersection with Hillsdale and Old Brook Road. We're looking at a peanut between, because there's two closely spaced signalized intersections, and we're going to convert it to a peanut. This one's, the estimate's still under review, but it's going to be pretty expensive. There's a lot of right-of-way impacts with this one. There's a proposed site plan for the one building on the south side of the north side of the intersection, which will be the lower part of this screen. That's going to be, we're looking at it as from a right-of-way perspective, it may be a total take because of the utility impacts. But there are a lot of utility impacts on the other quadrants of the intersections that are causing the cost estimate to be going to be pretty high. The next one, yes.
Well, yeah, I would have questioned if county staff were here, but they're not, so I will skip it. Sit on it.
The next one is we already talked about Barracks Road. This is the county portion. The real difference between this one and what you saw before is we are adding a right turn lane at the ramp terminal in the eastbound direction, and we're adding crosswalks on the west side of that interchange terminal ramp, which aren't currently there. So that was actual recommendations from a previous study, and for this to be standalone, we have to make those improvements. And the cost estimate for this one was $37 million. So you had 92 for the one application, 37 for this one. I think the whole total cost of the whole quarter was 29 million, 129 million. So they're pretty close. There is some savings from the larger project in cost, but it's not significant. Any questions about this? I know these are shockers. These were shockers to me too. But in talking to my counterparts across the state, I think everybody's seeing the same sort of escalation in costs from previous rounds. The next project is the last one is Plank Road down in the southern part of the district. And we're basically just converting this intersection or series of intersections to a series of arc cuts. And I haven't gotten the cost estimate on this one yet either.
But wait, I'm just curious, what do you mean by arc cuts?
Basically, you're taking a full intersection, unsignalized intersection, and putting in directional splitter islands in the median so that you can only make, it doesn't allow the through movement. It only allows the left turns from the main line. And then you have to go down. If you wanted to go through from a side street, you'd have to make a right, go to the next crossover, make a U-turn, and then come back and make another right.
So is this basically so people going southbound on 29 can go get pizza at Dr. Ho's left? Am I reading this correctly?
No, it's so the traffic can go faster and not have to stop.
Right, right. But I guess you'll have a turn lane essentially so that it doesn't stop traffic.
Well, there's a turn. Most of them have turn lanes there already. Most of the crossovers are already in place. I mean, we are modifying the one at the north end. We're shifting it around to improve the sight distance at that location. But the other ones are existing crossovers. All we're doing for them, for the most part, is putting a directional splitter island in the median, and then we're adding some looms on the outside to accommodate larger vehicles making the U-turn. With some acceleration lanes.
These are actually identified through a safety study, so it
Yeah.
reduces some of the turning movements at those intersections, so they're less complex between cars going through the intersection.
Those people who like pull into the middle of the intersection to see if they can make the left turn, and they're waiting in the middle of the intersection. So.
Hey, Chuck, sorry to speak out of turn, but do you have a notion of how many people are on the, we'll say traveling westbound on Plank Road, passing Dr. Ho's, crossing 29 and continuing on the other piece of Plank Road?
We don't have that number off that. We do have that data. I don't have that information right in front of me. There's a study as part of the application. So we have that information available that we can provide you. It's in the application.
This eliminates that, right? You got to use the U-turn motion to execute that option now.
The other thing I will point out, Peter, is that we didn't look at it, and we're not showing any bike or pedestrian facilities out here. But when we get to construction, if that becomes a concern, there are improvements we can make so that the bicyclists don't have to make the right in the U-turn. They could go straight across, but we'll have to look at that on a case-by-case basis. I know that question came up in some of previous applications around the smart scale. And we incorporated, there's a rural crossing R-cut concept that allows the bicyclists to cross straight across versus having to basically go the other way.
Thinking about somebody driving across the county on Plank Road, actually in this case, y'all are thinking about that too, right?
Well, the other thing is there's a fire station on one side of the road, and we're gonna design the one median crossing so they can go straight through with a mountable median island. This way they don't get held up in their travel time. All right, I think that's it. Any questions?
I think I managed to formulate this in a way that won't get me in trouble. Have you guys talked to the county about realigning Hillsdale Drive through the mall? And does that affect this roundabout proposal?
There's been a lot of discussions about a lot of projects on the Rio corridor. If you look in the study that the county did, they do have that alignment in. There's a development on the north side. You've got Putt Lane there, and where that would be next to the, I think it's Verizon building. We were looking at realigning Hillsdale through that corridor and putting a roundabout at that location, and then having the entrance from the development on the north side connect to it. It would involve figuring out how to deal with Putt Road, that street right there, because it would be right next to the intersection. I well, we can look at that again. I mean, there's been a lot of discussions about it. And that's an alternative. Even at this location, there were some in the study that the county had line and grade do. They had some alternatives for this intersection where they basically realigned the entrance to the one property opposite Old Brook Road over to Hillsdale and all realign Old Brook Road over to Northfield Drive as an alternative. But this was basically what the county wanted us to work with them on as an application. Yep. So that's why we went with this one. This was, like I said, this wasn't something we presented to them. This is something they requested assistance on.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Chuck.
I will say give another plug for one more thing. We have another round of STARS studies coming up, and we're trying to identify locations. And it'd be good. I mean, especially from the city, if you guys have some locations that you might want to be thinking about, we can have a discussion about it and start to get those in. The other thing is I have the next round of pipeline studies is going to start in January. So we'll be circling up with you guys on those locations. Hopefully we'll get some updated VTrans priority needs this fall, and we'll have a better idea of what locations show up on the VTrans needs, so we can start looking at those for pipeline studies for next year.
Sandy and I are going to get together right after this and get some time scheduled on our calendars to talk about those STAR studies. So that is definitely on our.
Those are like they're like the pipeline studies, except there's a little, it runs similar. We do the public outreach and we do the surveys and we do the studies, but there's a little more flexibility there, and it's gotten, basically we can pretty much do a lot of stuff with those studies. We haven't really done any in the city necessarily, but definitely would like to pursue some if you guys are interested.
Yeah, we definitely have planning needs in the city, and I definitely need some support from VDOT to fill in some of those needs. So happy to talk about it more offline.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you all.
Thank you, Chuck. Christine, turn it back over to Cordell for Safe Streets and all.
Thank you. So I'll start with the background. Move Safely Blue Ridge is the region's plan to reduce fatalities and serious injuries for all road users, no matter their choice of transportation. I have to emphasize this is a regional project and covers the counties within the TJPDC jurisdiction. Albemarle, Covina, Green, Louisa, and Nelson, as well as the city of Charlottesville. This grant comes from the SS4A federal program, which supports the United States National Roadway Safety Strategy. So the long term of this goal is to reduce traffic fatalities and serious injuries by zero using a safe system approach. I'll talk about the activities that we have completed to date, but I want to start with the process. So we have a 4-step process. The first step was identifying issues and opportunities during spring of this year. We completed, well, actually it was June. We completed the first step through extensive public engagement. We conducted a survey that allowed the local residents of the jurisdiction to share their specific safety concerns. So we held 6 in-person public meetings, 1 in each jurisdiction, and 1 virtual public meeting for all jurisdictions. We also organized and attended 21 pop-up events across the jurisdiction where we conducted the survey. Step 2 is currently in progress. That is extraction and analysis of the survey data. So this data will be crucial in helping us establish priorities for the safety initiative. Step 3 has simultaneously also been in progress. That includes reaching out to the jurisdictions and scheduling site visit based on the high injury network communication. So this step will lead to the development of targeted safety strategies based on the priorities. All those 3 steps will serve as the foundation of the final step, and that is the development of the comprehensive safety action plan that will outline specific actions and measures to enhance transportation safety in the region. I would be happy to do a formal presentation on this topic in the future, and if you have any questions, please reach out to me.
All right, no questions on that. I'm excited to see what's coming out of that in the future. Christine, December meeting time.
Yeah, if we follow our regular every other month, 4th Wednesday for Policy Board, 3rd Tuesday for Tech, it falls on Christmas. And the week before Christmas. So trying to work around Albemarle County Board of Supervisors revised December schedule. They've also moved their December meetings. We're going to make a recommendation to the Policy Board that they meet Wednesday, December 18th, which usually is a board meeting, but it no longer is, so that's available. Putting you all the Tuesday before that. That would be MPO Tech on December 10th from 10 to 12. If there is not a conflict and we are able to establish a quorum, I'd recommend that we do that meeting virtually in order to accommodate the change in the schedule. And if that works, we'll go ahead and send out the calendar invite. If you guys can respond to that calendar invite, that'll help us ensure that we do have a quorum available to hold the meeting.
And just in terms of the materials in December, I'm sure we don't really know everything that's going to be on the agenda, but do we have any idea? Is there anything going to be juicy that we are going to want to discuss in the room together? Or?
Not that we are aware of to date. I have no idea if federal functional classification will come back to you in October or December.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah.
But we don't have any action items lined up that we know would be better to hold in person. And as a matter of fact, we've even talked internally as staff, if there are not important action items, we'll work with the chair to say, should we cancel the meeting? Because I don't want to pull people together if there's no reason for you all to be here.
All right, sounds good.
Hey, Christine?
Yeah.
At the January meeting, the the Policy Board actually voted to hold their December meeting on December 3rd. So do they have a new conflict with the December 3rd meeting? Mm-hmm. They set that meeting for December 3rd, and it doesn't look like they have a Board of Supervisors meeting scheduled.
Is that a Wednesday?
Tuesday.
I think it's a Tuesday.
So they moved, oh, yeah, I don't have that date. So I need to go back to Policy Board. That would put y'all's meeting in November.
Mm-hmm.
Meeting in October and November.
Yeah, it's in the January minutes in the February packet if you want to go.
All right, well, I'll go
reference.
back to the Policy Board chair. These are the dates that he recommended when we did the agenda setting. So maybe he's looking to make a change based on that original adopted date.
Yeah.
That would be the week of Thanksgiving too.
For you all, so you all have to meet 2 weeks after you did. I mean, you'll meet at the 3rd week of October. And then potentially as early as the 3rd week of November. Yeah, if we can, if the Policy Board wants to make this change, I would request that the MPO Tech follow suit so that the meetings are spread out as possible.
Yeah.
Because that decision was also made when they still had monthly meetings. not every other month, so they were probably gonna cancel one and hold the December in place of the November and December.
Yeah, that's how it had been traditionally, but also I think they moved they changed the month they were meeting anyway, so, but just wanted to point that out so you can make sure everybody's coordinating around the same information.
So for you all, it would be December 10th and 12th. We'll send out a calendar invite for that for virtual.
Cool. All right.
Assuming the policy board doesn't make a change next week.
Yes. We'll see.
And if they do, we'll let you know via email.
Cool. So we are now at roundtable updates. The city is listed first, so I'll go ahead and get started. The big one I wanted to update y'all on is we are going after a Safe Streets for All demonstration grant. This is in addition to the safety action plan that we're currently doing with TJPDC. We are looking to do a set of demo projects on city local roads. So our roads in the city have different typologies, except for the ones that are in everybody's neighborhood. The ones that are outside of your front door, we don't have a typology for. We don't really have great standards or practices or design guidance for. We lean pretty heavily on MUTCD for those sorts of roads, and that changed over the past year to have less warrants and things for our traffic engineer to lean on to say whether applying a traffic calming intervention one way or the other is a good idea at some place or not. So we want to be able to test those things in places all over the city. We are going to put up some local funds and get an 80-20 match from feds to be able to do all these testing. We're looking at 6 different traffic calming interventions, and we would be looking to apply those to at least 6 different corridors throughout local neighborhoods. We are wrapping up that grant application like today or tomorrow. It's due next week, so kind of hustling on that. The other thing I wanted to update everyone on, and Tommy would kill me if I didn't, is Loop the Bill. It's coming September 28th. That's National Public Lands Day, last Saturday of the month. Hundreds of people will be out on the Ravenna Trail, walking, biking, running. In the past, it's been, do the whole 20-mile loop. This year, they have a new feature where they will have sort of cheer zones along the way, every 5 miles or so. And they'll tell you when the bigger group is going to be coming by those cheer zones. If you want to just hop on and walk for 5 miles to the next one, or just be a part of the pack for a little bit of the day and not the whole day, that's an option now. And they're advertising when those people are going to be coming through. So we'd love to see all of y'all out there at some point in the day, maybe not the full day, but there's also going to be a party at the end of it once you get back to the Ravenna River Company site. Music, drinks, fun time. Hope everybody can make it out. If you don't make it out on the 20th because it's raining, there is a rain makeup day the next day on the 20th. So as long as the trail is good to walk on, we will still get out there one way or the other on that weekend. I've got a few extra flyers here. If you guys want to take them back to your offices to share the information with your colleagues, you're welcome to do so. That's all we got going on in the city this month. Karen, you want to tackle that, or we're gonna pass this one? All right. Red share.
Starting a brand new fiscal year while also wrapping up the last one is always a very interesting time, and just getting everything together. Just came back from the ACT International Conference in Denver, where I got to hear a lot of good presentations about the renaissance of carpooling and van pooling. So it looks like that's starting to garner some more attention, and heard some great presentations on some bike infrastructure and biking campaigns that we're hoping to implement, leading up and into Bike Month again for next year. So you've always got to be thinking ahead. We are also still working through our CAP, which is the Commuter Assistance Program abbreviation, strategic plan that we will be doing, or that we're doing for the state. Due to some funding issues, we got a later start than was anticipated. So DRPT has extended up the deadline to be able to have a full year to be able to complete that. So I think we're wrapping up the last couple of chapters, and then hope to have a draft from the consultant
to review possibly by the end of this month, beginning of next month. A little bit of a moving target as we finalize a couple of the last details. DRPT is kicking off a campaign for connecting communities starting September 1. So that will mostly focus on transit, and we will be assisting them in promoting that, which ties very lovely into also September is the anniversary of the Afton Express. So I'm sure we'll have some promotions and some things revolving around that. And yeah, I think that's it for right here at the moment.
I don't have anything else. Do you have anything else to add, Chuck?
No, I think, I mean, I pretty much said everything before. We're working on smart scale. I gave you the updates on the future studies. We're also looking at probably this fall starting the TAP and revenue share outreach to see if you guys need any assistance with that, like for those programs for next year. So those will be coming forward also this fall.
Awesome, thank you. DRPT, Wood.
Sure. Two quick updates, just two federal grants to give everybody a heads up about. First one is a Railroad Crossing Elimination Program, NOFO, that was released by the Federal Railroad Administration. Applications for that are due September 23rd. If you are interested in pursuing one of those, feel free to reach out to me and I can help put you in touch with our rail folks. Second one is a Reconnecting Communities pilot program, NOFO. It was announced on July 3rd. There's more than $600 million available for capital construction and community planning grants. Applications are due September 30th. If you're interested and not prepared, USDOT is running all sorts of grant writing clinics and having office hours for people that are interested in applying. I have a bunch of dates. I'm not going to sit here and rattle them off. I'm happy to email them around to everybody if there's interest in receiving that information. And that's pretty much what I have in the way of updates today.
FHWA, do we have someone from? Is Steven still on? All right, we'll move along then. FTA. All right, Kat, I don't think has any updates. Jonks?
Yeah, we finished up a rural transit needs assessment study last June. It was presented to our board. I think the next steps is that I need to get Lucinda so it can be presented at the regional transit partnership, maybe some agenda in the future wherever we have room. And then at some point I can probably present it to you all in the policy board at some point, just the findings. Get on some future agenda maybe after the regional transit partnership.
Might also be a good audience for the Rural Transportation Advisory Committee.
Okay.
Get in touch with you about that.
All right.
Yeah. Thanks.
Then we have a couple studies that are still in its last stages. One's on electrification fleet, and the other one's on microtransit. Looking at possibilities for Crozet, maybe green. More to come on that.
All right, and last but not least, Bill, do you have any updates for us from UVA?
Very little, other than school is in session starting, I think, next week. So all the students and bus schedules and stuff will be back to their normal semester ways. So.
Yeah, and I will give one UVA/city crossover update.
Oh yeah,
we are Scramble Crossing next week. Actually, maybe happening today at Brandon Avenue at JPA. So a Scramble Crossing is all of the cars are stopped and all of the people can cross whichever way they want to go. So my understanding is this is the second that has been put in Virginia.
Alderman McCormick is the first.
Alderman is not one. Yes, it's not painted as one.
Yeah, it can be used as such, but it's not. Yeah, it's not marked.
It's not marked as a scramble crossing. The only other one that's marked as a scramble crossing is in Harrisonburg. From what I understand.
Did you say this was JPA?
JPA and Brandon.
Yeah, and if for those of you who don't know, we have a new upper class housing building. It's actually two buildings opening on Brandon next week, and that'll put the population of students there at like about 1,000. So that's a lot of kids coming up Brandon and crossing over to go to their classes on a pretty regular basis, plus all the bus traffic. So yeah, so it's much needed there.
Yeah, really excited about that one. All right, matters from the public. Do we have any other matters from the public? No. All right, so I guess we can adjourn.
Great.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Good job.
Thanks, everyone.